The following program is powered by Ride the Wave Media.
You are now listening to The Restored Wife.
Welcome back to the Restored Wife podcast. I'm your coach and host, Brenda Kradolfer, and I have Stephanie here with me again this week. We had such a blast last week talking about the highs and lows of our relationships, and we left asking ourselves the question, when was the moment when our desire for change was big enough to act, big enough to make a change? And does somebody have to hit rock bottom to start making changes in their relationship? So Stephanie, welcome back. So glad to have you.
Well, hi. It's so good to be back. I love what you're saying already. Just like, when did I really reach out for support? Did it have to get to rock bottom? And I told last week on the episode, I was talking about when my husband came into our bedroom and asked me if I wanted a divorce, asked me if that would make me happy. And I think, that wasn't, I would never compare my relationship to other people. I tried my best not to. But at that point, that's when it kind of became realistic that I wanted something to change. That was the point that I was like, I don't want to keep going on like this. There's got to be a better way. And the things that the books that I was reading, the podcasts that I found were really giving me the evidence that like we were not compatible. Like I said last week, I was kind of like, oh, we have different ways of communicating. We have different ways of showing love. And that's why eventually when I found the empowered wife, I really liked being accountable for my side of things and being able to change myself and change, feeling how I felt when I left my bedroom in the morning. I just remember for a long time in our relationship, I would just like be pissed off the moment I woke up. And, my husband didn't even have a chance. So I also have an extremely loyal husband, and he would tell me he would stick around for the kids. He did not want a divorce. And that scared me too, Brenda, because I was like, well, then I'm going to have to be the one that splits up our marriage if we get a divorce. And I'm going to, take the brunt of that. And yeah, so it was a awakening for me, but I wouldn't say it was a rock bottom. It was a point that I wanted to pivot. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I love what you brought up about all the different books that you were reading, giving you evidence that you weren't a good match, that this didn't make sense. It was like, yeah, we are totally different. No wonder why we're having issues. Was there like why didn't I see this before? Or was it like this happened later on in the relationship?
I think, when we fell in love, we were having so much fun together and we were adventuring. And it was, the controlling part of me. I talk a lot about our fertility journey, but there were signs of things going on before then too. My husband, we were long distance and my husband had bought a house. And even when I started to like decorate things, there was even this weird battle between me and my to-be mother-in-law. At this point, I was the girlfriend, but like we were long distance. So I would come down to his house, drive 5 hours and like, be putting the silverware drawer away. He had just moved in and like putting the bath mats a certain place in the bathroom. And when I would come 2 weeks later, his mom had been there and she'd moved everything around. And like even the pictures on the walls. And I was like, oh, hell no. I'm trolling. And I was like, what's the deal? I am the lady of the house, And oh, yeah. Yeah. So when I did read these books, I think at that point, we started to make some bigger decisions. When we got married, when I was officially living together, we were living together when we had a family and even, like getting the dog, having a cat, life really merging together. And when I would read these books, it made sense to me. We have different ways of, like I said, communicating and showing our love, especially. And there was nothing beyond that. It just explained you do things differently. So there you go. And I was just like, now what? Now what do I do? So when I read The Empowered Wife, it gave me some tools, to experiment with to see how we could communicate better, how I could actually be vulnerable and express my feelings, or how give him the information so he's got a shot, you know? Um,
Yeah. What you're describing, I just like I hear the tension, like the mother-in-law changing everything around. Like I'm also like, yeah, I can put myself in your shoes and just be like, yeah, I'd be ticked and I'd be like, what is going on here? And I love that you brought up the dogs and the cats, because it's like, okay, so I've seen a picture of my husband with a cat in his youth, and I didn't know that he hated cats and animals of almost every kind, like, and I grew up out in the country, where animals were just part of everyday life. And I remember before we got married, I was like, all I need is like a little piece of property and a goat. Like, can you do that?
oh,
Yeah. And like, that's all I want. And this was before we got married. So he was like, sure, if that's what you want, like, yeah, let's do it. And then we get married, and like the piece of property and the goat are just not in the cards at the moment, and
Mhm.
so I'll settle for a dog then, but it was like this point of contention because he wasn't really a big animal person, and it was like, like, this is so small, but it was like, it would just scratch that what did I do itch that
Right.
like, oh,
Mhm.
I didn't we didn't have the list of questions that we went through, pre-marriage. And I don't even know if that would have changed anything. I know people I've heard say that, like, I heard a parent saying, okay, when my daughter wants to get married, I'm going to sit the spouse down with this list and ask them all these questions, make sure we're all on the same
Mhm.
page.
Yeah. Oh, I'm like cringing at the same time, but like it's kind of helpful.
Yeah, like, I'm like, I can get it to be helpful, but I'm curious, like, I kinda had a few things come up like that, like, "Hey, I would love to have these things," and he's, like, totally on board, and then you get married, and it's real life, and things
Right.
progress in a, different way. You can't really predict
Mhm.
where the next job is gonna be, or, when somebody loses a job, or when you have to move, you know?
Right.
There's just so many things that come up that kind of put a wrench in things. And I think it's easy to answer those questions, especially if you just want to get married, right? Oh, I know the answers to those questions. I know how to answer in a way that will make this work, or like, of course I feel that way now, I don't know. Things just kind of change. So anyway, that was something that was coming up for me. And when you were sharing the story about the dogs and the cats.
Yeah, it gets real at a certain point. So I have to know, you don't have a goat now. You have a
I,
dog.
I don't have a goat. I have a dog. I have a
Yeah.
dog. I have an
Oh.
Australian Shepherd Poodle Maltese mix. It's
Oh
like
my
the most
God. What
random.
is
Yeah. It's like the most random mix because my husband's also allergic, like highly allergic to animals.
Oh.
So that was interesting because it was like, "Hey, I want this thing. He's allergic. Like, where is I should just be a good wife and not get this thing that he's allergic to, right?" Or like,
Yeah.
there's all these different this is something I would try to
Yeah.
like, I know a friend who gets allergy shots because she really wants a cat, like, why can't you just get allergy shots?
Right.
And again, just try to, like, control that situation and
Right. And like, where do you compromise
yeah.
and yeah, and not be resentful? And yes.
So, like, I did so much research around this decision
Oh my
too,
goodness.
and, like, I got really into Australian Labradoodles, and they're, like, $5,000, and
Yeah.
we're a young couple with, like, a kid or 2, like, we're not in the $5,000 dog range at this point in our relationship. I wouldn't even say we're there now. So, like, it was like, I want this so bad and I can't have it, like, my husband's in the way?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
So
So what
anyway,
happened? How did you so you figured out like a non-shedding hypoallergenic something dog, and how did you get your husband to get on board with that?
I can't say he was ever on board with it, but he did say a couple times, like, "Just do whatever you want." And
Yeah.
I didn't like the way he said it to me.
Yeah.
So I wanted him to be all gung ho about the dog, and that wasn't happening. And so that was kind of frustrating. And I got to the point where I realized that like he's telling me to just do, what I want. Like he's not gonna change his whole viewpoint of how he feels about this thing. But he's given me the go ahead several times. Like, if you really want this, go ahead, and do
Yeah.
it. And you have my blessing, basically, I guess.
Right.
So I had to work through that a little bit. And then, yeah, it kind of all came together. I was always looking at puppies online,
Yeah.
sending him puppies, like showing him how cute they were, and like,
Like, yeah.
yeah. And he did not budge very much. Yeah. So this was like years long thing. And yeah, it all came together. We got our dog we have now. She's an Australian Shepherd mix because I love Australian Shepherds and they're like they're not great for allergies. And we found this random poodle Maltese mix that kind of looks like an Australian Shepherd. So it's kind of random, but it's fine. He loves our dog. He puts her to bed every night. Like he puts her to
Aww.
bed every night. Yeah. And
Sweet.
like they have their moments, right? Like where he's like, I hate the dog.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I get it. Like, I don't always like her either. Like, yeah, this is frustrating.
Right.
Um,
Then you see the other side of the coin too for him. Yeah.
but before it was like me against him, now it's like I'm able to kind of, and if he got upset about the dog at some point, like I took that really personally. Like that was an attack on me. That was again my decision that I had made, and
Yeah. So you have to like defend it and yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of now the dog situation is just a give and take, it's like, but I get it. I get like, it's funny because like I get where he's coming from now. And I'm like, yeah, you were probably right. Like maybe this wasn't
Oh my gosh.
like I wanted it, it was like a desire that I had.
Right. Oh, it's tough to follow through on desires when like there's pushback from your husband. And even when they say, whatever you want to do, like go do it. I don't know. There's like two different situations I can think of right now where it's with our dog. We have a shelter dog who's awesome. Like we've had him for 4 or 5 years now, but every once in a while he has an accident in the house and it's at night. And like, as much as I've trained this dog, we're keeping him final choice, but like I cannot seem to break him of this. And he sleeps in the mudroom, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, you know what? When we're gone for 8 or 9 hours during the day, we need a dog door. Like I'd really, and I'd bitch and complain about it. And I'd be like, I have to clean this up and I'm in charge of the dog. And finally I was able to be like, I'd really love a new dog door so that when we leave, I'm not worried because it's stressing me out. And then and my husband did the same thing, Brenda. He was just like, I don't want any part of this, but if that's what's going to make you happy, like go for it. And, I'm like, I'm not as handy as you are. So I call my friend and I'm like, I don't even know if it's a left swinging door open or right, or like, cause we had to replace the whole door. And, I had an expectation on my husband when I expressed that desire. I was just like, I wanted him to be on board and take care of it. And like,
yeah.
and he wasn't. And so now I just picked up the door from Home Depot yesterday and I have a friend coming to help install it and everything. And he helped me. I had to return a different door because the dog door wasn't the right size, blah, blah, blah. And he helped me get everything into the truck and use ratchet straps and make sure I was safe driving. And, it's a 2-hour drive for me. And so he's been supportive the whole time, but maybe not the way I wanted him to be, And like, just get over your trunk. I'm going to get the door. It's going to be awesome. But yeah.
Such a difference. And I'm thinking when you're telling me this, I'm like, okay, this sounds fun though. You found a friend who's going to like come over and like get the door on with you, like I found too that like some things happen when I stopped trying to like make my husband into something he's not and just kind of get the desires out there. And then the ideas would come to me and I would be excited about, fulfilling on the desire, going to Home Depot or whatever it was, So I would love to talk about that some more, like our expectations behind what it looks like when, even just when we want something and, our husband's not jumping up to do it. Or I think you brought up a really good point. A lot of times they don't even know like what it is that would make us happy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So how can they even, I just wanted my husband to just get it, to just know, somehow.
Yeah.
Like that's how a beautiful relationship works. Like you just read each other's minds and then because you're so connected, right?
Right. Right. Oh
Because
my
that's
gosh.
in the movies. That's how it works on the big screen because it's scripted. It's like somebody can sit in their little apartment with their cat and write out a script of how they would love for their, a man to approach every problem that they have and then act it out for us. And then for me, I know that's what I think is going to happen now.
Right. Right. I totally agree. And there's just, the stuff I was fed as a kid, the stuff, the movies, and it just doesn't seem to work out that way. And I just even remember A Love Story, that movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Just thinking about it, and it's like love means never needing to say you're sorry or something like that. It just, yeah. And I'm like, that's such BS. It's not the way accountability and vulnerability and all that connecting stuff works. For me, I know that. And just the assumption that my husband should understand everything that's going through my mind. And, Valentine's Day is coming up. And what are you getting me? And, just like I remember in the past, Brenda, whether it was our anniversary or Mother's Day or my birthday, but I would have so many expectations on my husband. And it got to the point where I was like anticipating him failing. Like I would just anticipate it. And he stopped trying. He stopped trying to bring me anything because I was totally unpleasable. And that's that kind of goes hand in hand with me telling him, hey, I'd love flowers. I love getting flowers. I love just a handwritten card. Oh, but yeah. And then it, gives him some information, but I was unable to receive anything graciously, and whatever he did was wrong. So eventually he just stopped. It was really painful at the same time. But it was things that, one Mother's Day, he got a 4-man backpacking tent. And I love backpacking, and our kids at that point were ready to do it. And oh my gosh, Brenda, I'm going to cringe right now. But he gave it to me and we were setting it up in the yard, and I was like, great family present. Like not even for me.
Yeah. Right.
And like, just, yeah. And the poor guy, he just didn't stand a chance for a long time.
Isn't it funny? Like how different perspective, like having a different perspective changes things, because I totally can relate to you saying like, this is a family present. Like you didn't even think of me personally, and it's Valentine's Day. This is about like the one that you love, like expressing love to me personally. And then he buys a tent. When you told me that, I was like, that is so sweet. Like what a family man, and like, he's doing something we all do together. But I wouldn't have thought that in the past. I would have been right there with you. Like, if that were me, I know I would have been in the same situation. And Valentine's Day is so loaded. This is going to come out after Valentine's Day. So my thought is like, okay, if your Valentine's Day didn't go great, like,
right.
Let's talk, because I get it. For me, I know like my husband has gotten me, one year he got me these exotic flowers, huge, like birds of paradise. Like he got 2 of them. Okay. And they were gorgeous tropical flowers. And I looked at them and I thought, these are not me at all. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah. I was like so critical of these flowers. And I was thinking, like, what was he thinking? Like, he doesn't know me. Like, these are not the flowers that I would want. Like, I would want dahlias, and I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's so relatable.
Wasn't, it just didn't speak to me. And then my next thought was like, okay, so my husband grew up in Latin America. Like, this is something that he likes. So he's just getting himself something, or, something that reminds him of himself
Yeah.
on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. How'd
Yeah.
that
And
go over? What'd you do? Were you
like,
like,
I did.
thank you? And then,
Yeah. I said thank you, but it wasn't like a wow, thank you. This is incredible that you spent
yeah.
okay. This doesn't end right there. I went online to the company that he got from. I looked at how much that they cost.
Oh,
Ridiculous. I was like, why would he spend so much money on these flowers that I don't even like? But I did this all secretly. This is so sad. Like, I don't ever want him to hear this because like he doesn't know that I did this. Um So, yeah, but, like, I know that in the moment he gave him to me, or, like, I'm sure I said thank you, but it was, like, I don't know if my body language said thank you because
yeah.
I was just kind of caught off guard by it, and I arranged them, and I kinda had fun arranging them. Like, it wasn't the worst, situation, but looking back on it, though, it was, like, one of those examples when I'm reading the book or when I'm, receiving coaching at some point where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, those flowers." Those were such an incredible gift, so beautiful, and, like, now I'm like, I love that he, like, almost, like, found something that he liked, like, he thought
Yeah.
this was the epitome of just, like, his love for me and, like, something so beautiful and extravagant, and he was willing to just spend that money on those flowers, and so I just look at it so differently now, so
Yeah.
grateful, for who he is and what he does for me, but in the moment, it was like a cringy, "How could you do this?" moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, like, what do you think was getting in the way at that point? Just, like, the money factor or just that he didn't
It was like the belief that I just had, I think, that he didn't get me. That was
yeah.
like the tape that always played in my head. Like, he
Oh,
doesn't really know me. And so the flowers were evidence that he didn't know me
oh my
because
gosh.
they weren't flowers that I would have picked out. They said nothing in the moment. They didn't say anything that screamed Brenda to me.
Yeah.
So it hurt in the moment. It was like, this guy
Mhm.
just doesn't know who I am. He doesn't, know what kind of flowers I like.
Yeah.
And so it really hurt. So I couldn't really, appreciate them in the moment. But now, like, even talking to you about it and thinking about it differently, I'm like, I see so many things now as a symbol of his love. And it doesn't matter
Mhm.
if it's my symbol of love, because I feel like I've kind of gotten over that barrier, really.
Right. Yeah, I think, that goes back to the love languages books and some of the other books I was reading. It's like just accepting how people show love. And it might
Mhm,
not be the way you're used to it or, whatever, but like there's so much to be grateful for and just
mhm.
the effort put in there. And yeah, I get that. I have so many stories of the battle days and just cringing and seeing it very differently now.
Yes. Yes. Well, Steph, this has been fun. I love our like stories from before when we saw things so differently. And I love that you again just bring up the love languages because I think that's a commonly recommended book. I think it's great to know things about myself now, you
Mhm.
know. It's hard not to read those things and put the expectations on the other partner and like the contention that comes when, it's not matching up. So, yeah, just going back to like I don't know if it's the accountability piece or yeah, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Hopefully we'll edit this out. When is this? 26 minutes.
No,
Talk to you.
I just get what you mean about expectations and gosh, they were so hidden though. I didn't even know I had expectations on my husband for a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff and just I was kind of I think it was baked into me too when I was young or just when I was born that like you don't tell people what you want. You don't, like that's not okay to have desires to like It's selfish is what I was taught. That like you please other people and that's how you show love. And so, yeah, getting in touch with telling my husband, hey, I'd really love a treadmill, something like that. It felt, I mean, it sounds a little silly, but like felt really vulnerable and scary to say that. And especially when I was getting in touch with like self-care and desires and what makes me happy, that having an actual treadmill too, like that takes up a lot of space too.
Yeah.
Part of my life, like I try to fit in every nook and cranny. And when I first started self-care, I would go for walks during COVID at like 5 a.m. with a headlamp. So I didn't disrupt anybody else around me. My kids would still be sleeping and I could help them with their Zooms and like I wouldn't take up space. And so, it was during COVID, the gym shut down and I was like, what I really miss is just running on the treadmill. And I like to watch, like Firefly Lane, like a girly show. Like that's what I love to do. And, like I live in Southern Colorado. There are trails all around me. And my husband would be like, well, Steph, like go on a trail run. And I'd be like, no, I really just want to watch a girly show and be on my treadmill. I will run much further if I can watch the show. And so I was like getting that pushback, like that bait. It felt like, that maybe my desire, my wanting that was not okay. And it just, I held on to that. And I was at a friend's house a couple weeks later and she was like, I'm about to move and I got to get rid of this treadmill. And I was like, I've got my truck. Let's put it in there. Let's do it.
It wasn't even your husband that like jumped up and got the treadmill for you or like, oh, Stephanie wants this. And it came about in a different way. And yeah, I love that piece of it, that it doesn't always have to come from my husband. Cause again, I put everything on him. If it doesn't, if he's not doing it or if he's not doing it in this way, then something's wrong. But just like getting it out there, getting through kind of the emotional process. Oh, I guess that's what I was going to say. It was like, okay, when I go through this emotional process, now I have hope and I kind of know how it's working internally in me. So I can kind of sit back and be like, oh yeah, like what you said, like I feel guilty or I feel weird taking up space, And so it became more introspective instead of, it's my husband that's just standing in my way all the time of me having everything that I want. Yeah.
Yeah. He got in the way for years, but really it was just me getting in my own way.
Yes. I was getting in my own way too. Why do we do that?
Gosh, it happens so easily.
It does. Well, I love talking about this. I could just talk about all the things that I did in the battle days and how I see them differently now. Thank you so much, Steph, for sharing with us your experience, your expertise.
You're welcome. This has been fun.